Let me tell you something about this character, of which today I shall be analyzing the journey of. The journey is a what if, because the developer themselves said in the game that you can indeed save her from her fatal fate when she, inevitably, due to sometimes player choices, sometimes her own choice, decides to, you know, go alone into the fray to redeem herself because she feels like she has to, right? Now, obviously, many people are weirded out, or like were weirded out. Why is this favorite character of players just treated like shit? Well, I'm not here to solve that. I'm here to tell you what happens to her when you decide to do something most players I have noticed don't really take into consideration when they meet her for the first time. You see, she's not part of the main brigade of the characters you get. You get your princess, you get the tank, you get all the other cast, right? Well, with her you can actually refuse to let her join. Because yeah, that's an option. Yeah, just pick the option. I don't think you will be a good match for our team. And then she goes her own way. You can still recruit her while you are in the tutorial area, but once you go away, she's gone from the game, or so you think, because there is actually a way for you to meet her, right? So normally when you recruit her, after you recruit her, in the first chapter of the story, you will get all the meet the best qualities of those characters type of stuff. So she is like this cheerful, upbeat, great person, helpful, never really blames you for anything, right? Well, if you don't recruit her in the first story, she decides to join a different place. She decides to join an anonymous guild where she is not the main character anymore. She's just one of the hundreds of grunts, you know. But over there, she actually begins her transformation for the first time because when you see her again, because you don't meet her, you don't merely see her. You can merely see her at the chapter's end if you don't recruit her, right? She's actually commandeering her own squad. And it's kind of hard to realize that it's her because, there's like hundreds of those being commandeered against the armies of the opposing forces, right? Um, well, while in normal story, at the end of the chapter first, the characters would have this like first kinda first conflict within the team would be brewing, right? You have this first conflict, and normally when people take her a long way, in the first chapter, she gets blamed for a lot of things. Now, players with meta knowledge might be aware that a bunch of the things that she gets blamed for, she doesn't really do them. But, we are led to believe that, hey, maybe this is not correct, but, our princess is definitely telling us that she did this, this, and that. You know, princess is telling us that. And, we are more keen to believe her because she has been, there is a reason she is a princess, there is a reason she was picked for this in the first place, right? I'm using the call sign princess as is her with her name files, not her real character name, because why the hell would I bother? Anyway, so during this first chapter, obviously we have our first conflict within the team, and Then she goes off, this happy, cheerful person decides that it's her honor and duty to, resolve this conflict. And since she's blamed for all of this, the only way she can prove her innocence is by going into the battle and showing just how dedicated she is, by going in alone and, coming back victorious, bearing the standard of the enemy. Well, we all know how that ends for her. Depending on player choices, obviously, she can either end with a knife in her ribs, dead on the floor, and buried in a mass grave, kidnapped and decapitated later. This is, by the way, the most wholesome death she gets, because other people actually come to help her in that one, you know? Other characters kind of start feeling bad for her. And she has, there is like, for the remaining of the second chapter, she actually kind of plays a sort of like a role, kind of get a reminder that of what we lost to the enemy. But really, the most common death I've seen in the statistics is where she is just, killed by 1,000 cats on the battlefield, and yeah, she's just left there because nobody really bothers to check the corpses. It's just another battlefield. And the characters just forget about her in the second act, because I mean, she was a traitor, right? She was a traitor after all. Now, obviously, we being the players and being armed with the meta knowledge, we are already aware that she was not very traitorous, and the traitor is kinda our quote unquote princess. But you know the deal. Now, in the second chapter, right, we actually don't see her at all. But we can see some correspondence on the bodies of dead soldiers, and she's not just commanding her little squad, but she's actually like a proper leader of an entire, unit. Like, she has an entire army under her. She knows how to be responsible for all of this. Because, you just decided to not take her along for the ride. She learns responsibility. And she builds it for herself. Actually, we meet her squad, part of her squad, that has been almost wiped out, with a few remaining soldiers praising her and saying that she is probably the best commander they could have ever gotten. And actually, if we go in the epilogue to the spot where those soldiers were, you will notice that the bodies, as long as you didn't recruit her, obviously, that the bodies of their fallen comrades, this is the only time in game we see the corpses being properly buried. There is actual proper cemetery in place, because that's how she cares for her subordinates, right? And this kind of theme of her being in our party and slowly just being destroyed by this like internal pressure, it kind of shows, because in third act at the beginning we have this massive spat with our companions. We really just place blame on each other, and depending on your choices from the first act, you kinda either what was it? You kinda either blame each other for her death, or you blame each other for trusting her in the first place, Even though it was player character recruiting her, other characters were supposed to realize that something is wrong with her, something is off with her, you know? Now, obviously, as we know, this can lead to death for up to 3 different characters, which is pretty crazy if you ask me. But you know, now, obviously, what happens to her during the epilogue is the most interesting part, because after we are done defeating, unless you ended the world, but like that's logical, you ended the fucking world. So if you decide to, not end the world and choose one of the more benign approaches, you will actually see her in one of the cutscenes for the ending of the game. Because, and this is an interesting tidbit, it's kind of randomly picked, if you were to believe this, between her either having a wife or a husband, because she's apparently canonically bi, I suppose, although that husband does look suspiciously like a woman, so trans lesbian representation, anyone? Yeah. And, in that whole story, it turns out that the reason she died was all along because we decided to believe someone with authority over us, or with some form of closer connection, because the princess in question has shown us, that she cares. Yeah, the players all know how much she cares when she tries to kill you at the end of the Act 3 to, end the world, because to her the world is as empty as she is, apparently, at least based on her dialogue, which was honestly, wow. This girl doesn't need to save the world, she needs a therapy. But yeah, that's where she goes. If we don't recruit her into our party of misfits, she builds a future for herself, and a better future at that. One that is, devoid of all the pain, devoid of sacrificing herself for people who, in most cases, in most players' playthroughs, who don't even fucking remember her a week later. They all forget her. Because in the end, she was just a traitor. She was just a happy-go-lucky idiot. Right? Well, maybe it's not right. Maybe we should consider whether we have someone like this or had someone like this in our lives at some point. A person who was so happy-go-lucky. But we've decided that she is a traitor and that she needs to be removed.